Thank you very much, Professor Kim, for your very kind invitation. I'm very grateful to TEJI Future Consensus Institute and the Academy for this opportunity, and to be here in Korea, of course, after 4 years of lockdowns, pandemics, and to participate in this so important debate. And also to listen to Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. He was humble. He's a very modest person, and he didn't say that the SDG agenda, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, were adopted thanks to his leadership. It was not that obvious that they were going to be adopted, but it was his very strong leadership and vision for the future that made member states adopt equally. He was one of the architects of the Paris Climate Agreement. So he not only has all the legitimacy to speak about it, to express the concern of why we are not on track with the SDGs, but he shows another leadership today with his speech, with his forward-looking ideas and suggestions, his concern about the artificial intelligence and sustainability. Now, I will speak here a little bit about education. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to prepare a more interactive and attractive presentation. It is a bit flat, but I hope the ideas are there. And I would like to express also what is today within the educational community largely, including also some of the technology companies, what are their views about the education and artificial intelligence, sharing both the concerns and also sometimes the enthusiasm about artificial intelligence, particularly in education. Now, do I go back? Yes. Now, we know that every technological revolution, this is not the first time that we go through technological revolution, it changes. It changes work, it changes education, of course, skills. And we know with the development of agriculture, thousands of years ago, foragers settled on farms. Then we have the Industrial Revolution, the steam engines, the factories, and then the late 20th century, the arrival of the personal computers, swap machines for monitors, and for laptops. And because Professor Kim was saying about the library, I was entering here also this hall, and I said how beautiful it is. It reminds me also of my students' years when we were going to libraries, we were looking at one book, but then also attracted by something else, and until this very day I like to keep a book in my hand. Albeit I work also with new technologies, but I think it's very inspirational to have this kind of setting. Now, what is the difference actually? Because we say it's not the first technological revolution. There were other technological revolutions. Why are you so concerned about it? We will adapt to it. It just gives a lot more of opportunities to people and to humanity. And I think there is a difference, of course. There is a difference because it's such a deep transformation, and because the AI is constantly developing and it becomes ever more powerful, and it's, as the famous movie now, Hollywood movie says, everything, everywhere, all at once. It just reinvents every sector. It reinvents economy, it reinvents also our daily life, our skills, our careers, and it is an ongoing process. It doesn't stop. The speed is incredible. And with the appearance, of course, of the last waves, and it's just the beginning of the generative artificial intelligence, for example, the OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, predicts that it will radically transform 1.1 billion jobs in the next 10 years. It's just the prediction. It may be even more because some consider that this is a very conservative estimate. And education, because definitely education is already impacted in some cases. It seems that it will grow. The predictions are that it will grow by 40% until 27, and the market of AI is anticipated to reach 80 billion worldwide until 2030. So all the educational institutions nowadays are posing themselves the question of how to prepare the students for this revolution, but also it is very important to look at education systems of how education systems globally and nationally adapt to these changes. The first thing that comes to our mind, of course, is knowledge and skills. And we know that what changes also the AI, changes in this particular case, is that while we prepare students today, give them particular skills, in the meantime, AI moves and the world moves. And it may be different, the world may be different tomorrow than what it is today. And again, this goes on. So it is quite a fluid context that we are looking nowadays. And it seems that education, and particularly higher education, they have to be reinventing. It's a constant process of reinvention. Now, the big question, of course, is whether the deployment of generative AI widens or narrows existing educational divides. Either they improve the quality and equity in education, which should be the primary role of any technology that is being introduced in education settings. And I think this question was very, very poisedly put by Mr. Ban Ki-moon, and Professor Kim, of course, was speaking a lot about these issues of equity and equality. So it's mixed, as Professor Kim said, it's mixed feelings. Some are enthusiastic about it, they're very excited, and some, of course, express concern, and there are lots of questions, because we don't know as yet the full picture. What is the impact? We're just the beginning of assessing the impact of the AI on many areas, including in education. But still, I believe that some advantages are emerging, and these advantages are personalized education, which is, we know that human beings learn differently. Some are auditory learners, others learn by reading, visual learners, and others. So it opens the opportunity to have a much more personalized education with people. And for that matter, some experts say that it will totally transform education, which was based mostly on the industrial model of economy, of this type of mass education. Everybody learns equally, everything at the same time, the same pace also, and that the AI will help have more of adaptive and personalized education. Others say, and I think this is true, that it may open incredible opportunities for students with special needs, to include them in a much more adaptive manner also in education systems, and to work with them individually according to their needs in order for them. This brings indeed some equity in educational opportunities. Integrated learning, also very interesting, very important. We know that many institutions are struggling with this type of learning, of cross-cutting sectors and sciences and disciplines. And speaking about SDGs, we know that it's interdisciplinary, and how to introduce this in higher education sometimes is a challenge. And experts say that AI may help go beyond these borders and be a little bit more, from that point of view, trans-sectorial. Raising academic standards and educational quality, yes, it may, of course, bring to that, although it's not a given, but there are certain opportunities there, some learning methods that are not offered today in educational institutions in terms of course content, immediate feedback, determining of students' engagement. All this can bring indeed a higher standard of raising academic standard. But there are obvious disadvantages. Now, one of the first, and I think it's very important, it is about reduced human interaction. Because we know that educational institutions, schoolings, all different universities and others, of course, they are about knowledge, but they're also a socializing place. They're a place where young children and students and others interact with each other, and then interact also with the educators. And I think it is very important that we have a good cognizance of this disadvantage, because we speak about social skills. Professor Kim spoke also about it. I think it's very important, because when they graduate, they need these skills. They are not just technical skills that they need, but we need them to become citizens. And this is where, when we were working with Mr. Ban Ki-moon at those times, we launched the concept of global citizenship education. It is about what kind of citizens young people come also from schools, from universities. And this is about civic engagement, about the democratic participation, about making their own choices, about critical thinking. All these skills are extremely important. So the second, once again, we call them soft skills. It is about absence of emotional intelligence, be it interpersonal skills, the way they collaborate with each other, having the feeling of empathy, creating this social, broadly, I would say, these social skills about solidarity, about belonging to a community. Then, of course, it's about leadership, about problem solving, conflict solving sometimes, and I would say last but not least, the communication skills. Communication skills are nowadays more and more valued by industry also, but also in our democratic life. And there is definitely a danger that with the AI, deployment of AI, this aspect of communication skills may be lost. Now, the other, addiction to artificial intelligence, it's also a problem that students may be losing their interest of learning themselves, of discovering things, of relying entirely on AI. And this may bring, on the other side, by the reduced capacity of them for thinking, for assessing, for this type of what we say critical thinking, and making their own decisions, not relying on AI, because AI will be in a position to make decisions. This is the difference between the previous technologies. Previous technologies were not taking decisions. AI will. And this is where I think we have to be very, very cautious. The obvious, of course, one is plagiarism. We should not develop here long. We know that there is such a problem and such a threat. And I would focus just a little bit more on equity. I think equity is something very important to be considered here, because it is a true concern about it. Now, generative AI systems are trained on data that exists, that relies on our biases, existing biases, be it biases racial, in terms of women's empowerment, in terms of all different kinds of our stereotyping and biases. And this can lead, once again, to prejudices being replicated by the AI. And you may know that Amazon, a few years ago, they had the system of AI for the recruitment, and it turned out that in most of the cases, 90% of the cases, women were discriminated by the AI, and in the, I think 2018, they just stopped this. Now they're developing new kind of a tool, AI tool, in order to move to recruitment, but I think this is a very serious concern, not just for women, but also for all different kinds of other situations where it may entrench existing already biases that we have. And that's why I think we have really to send a very strong word of caution when we speak. If you don't have checks, rules, regulations in order to integrate these AI technologies into education systems, and we lack them. There are no such rules and regulations, unlike, I would say, some of the existing now textbooks and others. Just to give examples, the education resources nowadays are bound and they should be vetted. Accuracy of the content, age appropriateness, relevance of pedagogical material, cultural and social suitability, with checks against biases. No such vetted procedure exists in education systems. And albeit all the models that exist, they claim that they have this kind of educational ability, but they're not going through any type of examination, assessment, and Unesco published recently a very important paper, I think what is very important is indeed to introduce in the education systems this type of vetting. So ministries of education, all the other educational institutions should build this capacity. There is no capacity nowadays. We just don't know how to approach this issue, how to regulate technologies. Because education is and should remain a deeply human act rooted in social interaction. Education is not outside the social interaction and societal concerns. It should stay. And to bridge also existing gaps globally. We know 80 million people still are illiterate, and 2.7 billion people around the world, or 1/3 of the population, does not have access to internet. So you see the gaps that exist. So investment in technology is important, but investment in human capacity is equally important in order to narrow these existing gaps. And finally, if I say this, I quote from the, and I finish from the UNESCO paper, they said that we should uphold the raison d'etre of education to help us make informed choices of how we want to construct our lives and our society. So this indeed is an inflection moment for education, and I think we really have to look into it with open eyes, not just to be mesmerized by technology, because technology should serve the people and not the other way around, as Mr. Ban Ki-moon just said. Thank you for your attention.